All right. Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Lunch Break with Josh and Ted Wachtel. I'm Josh Wachtel, and I'm the communications
Are
director
you on
for
mute, Josh? I can't hear you.
uh, Ted. I'm. I think I'm not muted. I think you're maybe don't have your volume turned up. Anyway, welcome, folks who are streaming in. We have a really special guest today, Vidia Negrea from Hungary. And as you're joining, I'd like to begin, as we have been used to doing, with a song. So I don't know any Hungarian songs, and this is even really an Eastern European song, but it's the closest thing that I could get to it. So I'm going to give it a try. It's called Volvistu Gali Star. Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Lambello. Volvistu Gali Star, I found my lucky star. Volvistu Gali Star, Lambello. Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Lambello. Magno, magno, magno mi, magno, magno, magno fi, magno, magno, Lambello. Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Lambello. Volvistu Gali Star, I found my lucky star. Volvistu Gali Star, Lambello. Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Lamancello. Magno, magno, magno mi, magno, magno, magno fi, magno, magno, Lambello. Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Lambello. Volvistu Gali Star, I found my lucky star. Volvistu Gali Star, Lambello. Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Volvistu Gali Star, Lamancello. Magno, magno, magno mi, magno, magno, magno fi, magno, magno, Lambello. Oh, magno, magno, Lambello. Magno, magno, Lambello. All right, folks. I hope that you can hear me, and I hope that Ted can hear me too. Ted, can you come on?
I am having technical
Technical.
difficulties that I think I'm overcoming.
All
Uh,
right.
it's My camera broke, as you know, in my computer, and so I'm having alternate uh, possibilities.
All
Uh,
right. Well, all right. Well, let me just get things started, hopefully. And if your camera doesn't work, well, we'll deal with
well,
it. We can.
the problem was the way I was doing it, I couldn't hear you.
Oh,
So
all right.
I'm now,
Well,
I think, almost at a point where
we
this.
prepare all these things, and yet still sometimes things go wrong. All right, well, that's to be expected.
There
Um,
I am somehow, but yeah,
all
I can
right,
participate. I just you
all
yeah,
right. Well, I think the show must go on, so let's carry on.
it
So, how are you
must.
doing otherwise, Ted?
I'm good. I'm really excited that Vidia is going to be here later, and I'm excited that we're moving along on this theme of wherefore art thou restorative justice. Like I've been talking to Paulo from Brazil, who's coming up next week, and we have some other people talking to, and it's exciting. I really didn't know what was going on, so uh, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, what was your overall reaction to what we heard from Paulo last week? I mean, sorry, from Ian Martyr, who,
Well, that it is progressing, but it's uneven, and there are still a lot of people with enthusiasm, and people are learning from from mistakes. Um, but I, I'm basically hoping that we can give a panorama view that's useful to people. And I just ran across a new book that somebody asked me to comment on that I think we might have the author or the editor on, because he's just done a whole survey of restorative stuff. So definitely things are happening, and getting people from different places, I think, is going to be productive.
yeah, for sure. I've been thinking about, in just even just in talking to Vidya to prepare for this, just how relatively new, in a sense, is this thinking that we're gonna, treat these justice cases in a different way, or in addition, it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be jail time. It doesn't mean that
Right.
there aren't going to be certain kind of punishments necessarily, but that this other way of thinking, that there are other things that need to happen for the victims, for the community, and to hopefully help the person who's committed a crime to understand the repercussions and possibly learn and change. I mean, this isn't all that new, relatively speaking, of a, I mean, maybe it's an ancient idea for sure, but in the sense of how it's being implemented alongside the system. Um, yeah, there you
Hi.
are.
Holy mackerel. Okay,
Yeah.
keep going. I'm just
Yeah.
struggling.
Well, and I'm thinking about somebody recently, in the last week who got in touch with you um, after reading your book, Dreaming of a New Reality, which kind of lays out your history and lays out, work in schools, work in the justice system, work in the care system, and sort of alludes to this idea of restorative community. Um, and looking at just how much, this field respects individual people uh, as people and looks at, really, uh, are you audible?
Yeah,
Okay, you are.
yeah.
Good.
I mean, it was a masking tape job. I took my phone and made it the camera for my
All
computer.
right. Well, you're a tech
So here I
whiz.
am. Okay, hi. Anyway, keep going. Thank you
Yeah.
for your
Well,
patience.
you know, how much struck, she was struck, this writer was struck by well, first of all, the commitment that's needed to treating people as individuals and to trusting that if we interact with them differently, certain other outcomes can happen. And
Well, it was one of the kindest and most generous letters I've ever had. She really got the point of the book and saw, the connectedness between what you do in schools and what you do in justice systems and what you can do in workplaces. I mean, she got it. And I think, uh, she's quite a published author herself. So the more people that get tapped into this and see the thread that ties it all together is giving people an opportunity to have conversations and in a respectful way.
Yeah. And the other thing I'm struck by is that, of course, we want to influence systems. And in some cases, systems are certainly being influenced or infiltrated in a sense, that these ideas are finding their way in. But then sometimes the systems are super hard to change. But at the same time, I'm one of the things I'm taking heart is just how many more and more and more people are being exposed to this as a concept and are drawn towards it. And
Well, one of the key reasons that we got involved with schools, and we have been working from the outset with Real Justice with Cops, because that's the origins of Terry O'Connell bringing us his police conference model. But, the problem is systems, really weren't designed to think about things that way. And, it's hard to sustain it. But we started to see, oh my goodness, schools have problems and they really do need help changing. Cops, the more criminals show up, the more job security. It's not a problem. But teachers were not prepared to deal with the behaviors that started to emerge in the 1970s. And restorative practices, I mean, in some ways, is a bit of a band-aid because underlying it is if we keep forcing people to go to school with very little, flexibility, we're going to keep getting more and more resistance. But in the justice system, they had no stake in making changes. So we started with schools and we thought, well, if we can show really good outcomes in schools, uh, might not at some point society say, geez, they're getting these outcomes or
yeah,
using these practices. Couldn't this work in the
yeah.
justice system?
All right. Well, I want to start to turn our attention to our guest today, Vidia Negrea, psychologist from Hungary, and I thought maybe you could just start, Ted, by sharing how you met Vidya,
Yeah,
and then
well,
we'll
I
go to
actually met her just by hearing about her. I was in Budapest. There was like a press conference. This woman who brought me over to, introduce restorative practices, and some of our trainers
And this
subsequently
is
got
like
over.
the late 90s or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Late 90s into 2000 and that era. And uh, when I was talking about this stuff, somebody mentioned this woman named Vidia Negrea at the youth reform school.
Mm.
It was a big prison-like youth facility in Assad, I think it said, and that she was experimenting. Well, she'll talk about it specifically, but what I recall was that she'd had some kids involved in writing letters to their victims. I think most of them were never sent.
Mm.
Uh, but it was an exercise for kids to think about the impact on other human beings. And so that was touted as and it was a restorative justice practice, which she invented, just by her own thinking. So, I heard about her, and at some point, Susan and I met her, and we invited her over to um, do an internship with our our programs for delinquent and at-risk kids. And we were heavily involved with the courts then, so it was really appropriate for her. I think that was around 2000. And she just wanted to know if she could bring her daughter. She had a teenage daughter. And a funny side story, if I may, her kid came to town in Bethlehem, went to a local middle school, and after her 1 year there, got the highest English proficiency grade in the school. So it was pretty incredible. But Vidya had a very important experience, I think, for her as a professional, and she can tell you about that herself. But that's how we got acquainted. So.
All right, and we've been friends ever since. So Vidya, would you turn your camera on, and we will welcome you from Budapest, Hungary. Yeah.
Yeah, welcome, and thank you for having me here. And Ted, mentioning my daughter's achievement in English make me to realize that I'm still improving my English, but I will never be as good as she is.
All right. Well, your English is great, Vidya. and I'm sure that everyone will be able to understand you today. So let's get right into it. Well, I know a little bit about your story because we've been friends so long. You started in Hungary, but uh, started in Romania, excuse me, in Transylvania. Um, but you spoke Hungarian. Your father was Hungarian, if I'm not
No, my
mistaken.
mother, my
Oh,
mother
your
is
mother.
Hungarian, my father is Romanian.
Okay, right, right. And so anyway, tell us a little bit about how you got started in this field.
Okay, so I finished my university degree in Transylvania. So I'm originally from Romania, and I started to teach in a school in my home city or town. Um, and as a teacher in philosophy during the Ceausescu, during the dictatorship, you really couldn't make too much changes. But after it ended in 1989, December, I thought that this is the freedom. So it's democracy, or we try to build democracy. So it was the happiness which comes with the changes in the regime. And of course, a lot of naivety was there. I was a young teacher who thought that now having the freedom to speak in both languages in the school, and having the possibility to have conversation or discussions, honest discussion, this is something what is needed. But it wasn't the case. So in March 1990, I got into a critical situation because some of my students wanted to make justice by um, revolting against Hungarians. So I'm half Hungarian, half Romanian. And during my class, some of them said that they want to drink Hungarian blood. And I said, well, you can start with me because I'm half Hungarian. You don't have to move to the next city, Târgu Mureș, it's the name, where a writer asked the Hungarian population to come for a peaceful demonstration, showing that they don't want anything against the Romanians. So it was really a tension between the ethnic groups, created mainly by the new government. It was a government in transition. So I found myself between these two groups, and within 2 weeks, I think I had to leave the country, because otherwise uh, uh, I risk to lose my child, being pronounced as a non-patriotic mom. So we have to leave. So I came to Hungary in the camp for refugee, and I didn't really think about what work I should do. I wanted only to have safety and a place where to stay and work. But I realized that the university from Budapest had very good relationship with the university from Cluj, so they gave me a diploma in psychology, because although I learned psychology, but it wasn't recognized due to the dictatorship, who thought that no one who, psychology wasn't really allowed at that time. But in Hungary, it was great. I got my license in psychology, and within 1 month, I was really treated so respectfully, and so I felt safe, and I said that I will take any job. So the first place who said that they need a psychologist, and I said that I have no experience. They said, no worries. After working with few hundreds juvenile delinquents, you will be an expert. So I started to work in this juvenile detention center. And because, I as a refugee, you want to be accepted, but not having people feeling pity or sorry for you. So I wanted to be treated like anyone else. And for this reason, I thought that I have to become a good professional. So I started to ask questions about how efficient is the punishment. I didn't got the answer. I got the answer which said that we are working in this way for 125 years. So it's not the point if it's efficient or not, because this is what is meant to do in a juvenile detention center. But also I thought that it's not okay, because the offenders, the young offenders, felt that they are the victims. And some of them, they said, they shared their story, in which was clear that some of them were victims in their family, in their community, in schools. A lot of young offenders were bullied in schools, so they started to make justice for themselves. And I thought that it's not fair to punish without understanding what it's behind. So I started to do this follow-up research with 500 students for 5 years. And it came out that 75–80% of them were facing new charges within few months, even if their behavior in the institution was very good. So in this follow-up, we realized that the label what they got from the community was so bad, so they couldn't get rid of the label of being the bad kids. Right. But also for the family was difficult to have them back, especially if they were coming from a Roma family community. I had some parents saying that he doesn't have the same smell as we have. So the habits, the behavior wasn't anymore compatible with the Roma community. And these kids really, they found out that it's easier to do something and go back to the prison, because they know the rules there. It's their life, it's their word. So that was something what was really making us to think, what can we do?
Vidia,
yes?
Can I just, one thing you said earlier that I always found fascinating, just to clarify, is, if I understood correctly, that the more compliant the kid was within the detention system, the better behaved they were, the more likely they were to offend when they got out.
Yes.
I thought that was really interesting. Thank you.
It was weird, but when you realize that they want to change, but no one believes in them, and even the family are not supportive with them. Or, for example, if something happened in a school, they were the first one who was questioned. So it was really, really difficult for them to keep their dreams or to become, to have a different path. Yeah, that was really shocking. But in the same time, they had no idea what can be done differently. And they felt sorry and pity for themselves. And that was, for me, something which was really helpful at that point, because one of the students who had these suicidal thoughts, because he thought that he's the one who doesn't deserve to be here, I mean, in the institution, when he was asked about what does he think about the woman who was in the cashier when he pointed his gun towards her, the gun actually was a toy, and he wanted really to try out something what we read in a book about bank robbery. And he wanted to have his own experience because he was leading a radio show for students in a high school. And he thought that it will be a great idea, a great experience to be able to talk about how it's working. But he was surprised when he saw that it's working. And he even took the money back before he thought that the working hour will end. He bring the money back, and he was so happy when he saw the police officer, because he couldn't enter in the bank. It was closed. I mean, the police already closed it. And he couldn't understand why he got this punishment, because he brought the money back. He was very polite in the bank. There was a there was a book so he was reading the book written by a robber who left a bottle of whiskey in the on the scene. So that was his habit, and that's why he was so popular, because he was viewed as a hero, and a polite man who is leaving even a whiskey to the people who were in the bank. So this boy thought that it's not fair that he's locked up for 3 years, and he really couldn't understand why the system is working in this way. But when I asked him to think about this woman experience and write his thoughts about it, he came back saying that he had no idea. Maybe worried, maybe weird, but he said that he spoke with his parents on the phone, and he got the phone number of the bank. So he came back with this phone number. And what I did at that time, I didn't follow, I mean, the regulation of the institution, because you are not allowed to make a phone call from inside. But at that point, I forgot that this is the regulation, because I was curious, first of all, what happened with the woman. But second, I wanted to help the student or the inmate to understand that it's not him the only victim in this situation. So when he figured out through this during this phone conversation that the woman is in a psychiatrical unit because of his act, he said that he would do anything to make things back. But of course, it wasn't the case. So I asked him to write the letter to this woman and just write his story, how he thought about this. And in the meantime, I was doing my clinical psychological degree. So I said that I will find out where the woman is and who is the doctor, the psychiatrist who is treating her. So when he wrote this letter, we sent it to the doctor. And I asked him to decide to read the letter and decide if it's appropriate for the woman to receive this or not. And after a few days, the doctor called me back saying that this letter helped the woman more than the drugs what they trying to give to the woman, because she understood that it's not her fault, it's not on her. And even more than that, she wanted to have a phone conversation with the boy. And of course, I was so happy that finally they can communicate with each other. And of course, this wasn't allowed. I mean, it's not allowed, but I forgot about these rules. So when they had the phone conversation, they decided to meet in person when the boy will be released for a few days because of good behavior. And the boy came back saying that the meeting with the woman and with the woman's husband, and of course his mother was there as well, made him to realize that the punishment can't have a meaning, because he realized that it's not only him and the woman who were affected, but all people who know him has to have an answer from him. And he realized that he needs to restore the relationship with the school, with the community, with the family, and so on. So this is how we started to work on how to repair these relationships. And in the meantime, I was curious to see what will be the reaction with the other students who weren't so educated, well educated, or they who didn't have the same grade background like he did, because half of them were Roma kids. And we just said, well, if you would have the chance to send the letter to your victim, what would be your thoughts? So amazing letters came out. We published with a colleague, a psychologist, the results, but of course we couldn't send the letters because the legislation didn't allow us to have this connection. But that point showed us that the punishment can have, I mean, the time spent in imprisonment can have a meaning, because it's the perfect time to help someone to be aware of the incidents, of the impact of the incidents, and start to rebuild, first of all, his own self-esteem, because they are not bad kids. They are kids who did bad things. And that requires time to switch this mindset. But also it is the possibility to start to build a new career for the future. So this is how it started.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did it develop from there? Or, maybe you can share just some of the range of restorative justice stuff that you got involved in, following that, so people get an idea of just the range of activities.
Mm.
Uh, can I make a request? There's one incredible story when you were early on, you were asked to go into a facility where I think it's a youth facility where someone was just killed, and you were holding a circle in an odd circumstance. And I don't want to tell the story, but
Yeah. Okay. So after this research or my survey, and as Ted mentioned, I was invited to US, where I really saw how restorative practices of restorative principles can work with troubled youths. So I came home and I started to implement in Hungary, doing experiments, doing trainings, and this is how I got involved in a group of experts who were asked to do crisis intervention in different situations. So I was invited to sent to a group home where a student was killed by another student because a jealousy. That one of the staff built very good relationship with the student who was killed, and the other one had never chance to have a person, a significant person for him. So he just stabbed this boy in the back, and he died, unfortunately. So the staff was asking for a circle. They didn't really know what to do, and that was when I offered to have a listening circle and to see who is affected, what is the hardest thing for them, and what is needed right now. And although I spoke before with everyone in person, and everyone was very motivated to have this environment where they can share, and we just couldn't move on, and everyone was just fixing on the floor. It was such a heavy situation, and I asked, what is happening now? Well, as a facilitator, you don't have the answers. You have people who can tell what they need. And one of the staff said, well, I cannot focus on anything else because there is a stain in the middle of the circle who is still there. So it was the blood of the boy. We were in the room where this happened, and everyone, I was shocked. I didn't know that is the place. So we decided to move out, and we had this circle in the courtyard, and we finally were able to go through. And yeah, that was a heavy,
Yeah. Wow.
heavy one.
yeah. I remember that. Whew.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, well, devastating, really.
yeah.
Um, yeah, well,
I'm,
tell us a little more about some other kind of settings that you ended
Yeah.
up working in.
can
And I
I,
think you,
I just suggest you've done some amazing stuff with family group conference, particularly with adult prisoners preparing to leave,
Yes.
the facility. I think that's an area that would interest a lot of folks.
Yeah, so having this program for troubled youth, we realized that some of the kids have their parents in the prison. And luckily, in 2007, we organized, I think with IRP and TED and the whole stuff, we organized in Hungary the first international conference on restorative practices. And we invited, and this is a side story, we invited head of 30 prisons, but only one show up. And this one person was and is still he became a very good friend because we started to have a lot of projects. After the conference, he said that he would love to have this restorative um, ideas in the prison because he sees how a lot of prisoners get lost when they have to go home. And that was the time when we had the students from our day treatment center with the parents in the prison, and we had this great director who was open to do some experiments. So we started to run circles with prisoners who were fathers, and in this way they realized that again, it's not only them, the one who are suffering because they are locked up, but there are so many other people who doesn't deserve, for example, their children doesn't deserve to grow up without fathers. So that brought us to the possibility to start to see how can we have this conversation between the parents and children and the families who are outside. So one one possibility was to set up different levels in the prison setting. First, it was to again to restore the self-esteem of the prisoners and try to help them to not identify with themselves with the crime. So just to understand that they can separate the deed. So the deed from the separate the deed from the doer and help them to do good things. And that was the first idea. Then how to rebuild the connection with the family. It was the next step. Then how to rebuild the connection between the relationship between them, the family, and the community, the neighbors and the community. And the last phase was how to include the victim and see what the victim's needs are. So it was really a process of 2 years for an individual. And it came out that all the inmates who went through this process never came back.
mm,
So it was like a 100%
wow.
success story. And after 10 years, um, this FGDM type of preparing the release from the prison was accepted by the Ministry of Justice, and now there is a law since 2016 which allows people who are about to be released from the prison to have this meeting with the families, not in the same way as we did, but still it's something much more better than it was before.
Yeah, great. So I know I mean, you're still doing a lot of work. You've done work in Romania, Transylvania, you mentioned to me. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, but before we move
Yeah.
on to Romania, in the justice system, it was interesting because in 2003, when I facilitate my first restorative conference with a young girl who, who by accident stole the purse of the director of finance from the Ministry of Justice. Everyone thought that
I
it was.
assume she meant to steal the purse, but she didn't know who the victim was.
Yes, but it was funny because we were about to start a program for those who were in probation. And the program didn't start yet, but we were there organizing things, and the Ministry of Justice had their trainings in the same building. So this girl came and she saw a lot of coats and bags, and she took one, and it came out that it's of this person who was so mad, and she really said, "How can you imagine to have a program for young delinquents when you didn't even start it, and this is what is happening?" So she was really, really angry, and um, the probation officers realized who was the girl, so they found her. The girl, of course, admitted, and the woman said that when I asked her if she would like to participate in a meeting where she can really express how angry she is and how disappointed, and I realized that she didn't share what happened to her with her family because it was shame for her. So although she was very upset and angry, she accepted to participate because she said, finally, here people will listen to me. So we had this very nice conference. I can recall that within few minutes, this woman, very angry woman, was trying to help the girl because she didn't have a napkin and she was crying and saying she's sorry. So the victim was ready to offer her support. So it was really like a like a conference done in US. This is what I was told. It's not they couldn't imagine that this reaction will happen in Hungary. So everything what was told about restorative seemed so far from our Hungarian reality. But with this conference, it became clear that the needs are the same, so it doesn't matter where you are. So we filmed this conference in 2005, and after 20 years, last year, I was asked to do a training for probation officers to learn restorative conferencing. So it took us 20 years. And when I showed the film, everyone was shocked, saying, "Why didn't we do this? It's here for 20 years and we didn't apply." Although there are, of course, changes in the legislation, and being an EU member, there are requirements for every EU country. But it's
To have restorative justice on the law
yes,
books. All right, so this is a
there are
significant.
yeah, there are recommendations
Ah,
to use restorative justice principles or intervention or mediation in criminal cases. But having conferencing where you involve not only the victim but the community, it's different. So it was accepted in projects, but it was viewed as something on the whole scale. But after different inputs from EU, and also there are a lot of other organizations who are doing a lot of work. Borbála Felegi, for example, her organization is doing a lot. So I mean, it's not a novelty anymore, but it took 20 years to really start to think that this is what we need, because otherwise we keep to punish people and they keep to come back, and so nothing changed. So I was so happy when I was asked last year to do a training in restorative principles and see what can probation officers apply. And they decided to use the restorative conferencing model. So 65 probation officers were trained last year, and this year in June, I will continue to train other probation officers. And the good thing is that it's not only for young people, but it will be available for adults as well.
Okay.
So that is a
Yeah.
I mean, having been there 20 years ago, it's
yeah.
amazing. I mean, we were very discouraged. I remember Vidia and I, she did a fabulous job locally of getting local municipalities. What are there, 22 districts in Budapest or something
Yes.
like that? Yeah.
Yes.
And she got local funding for kids from those, but they only paid like a percentage of the
This is
cost.
to go to the alternative school.
And we were lobbying for the Community Service Foundation was paying the difference at this point. And NVIDIA did a great job of lying. We got as far as the Prime Minister's office. And we had two top aides. We had the Prime Minister's translator worked with us beforehand so we could, show our slides and she would be prepared to translate and everything. And they were enthusiastic. They wanted to open multiple ones and all that. We said just one funding would be nice. But life is funny. It was about that time, well, exactly that time, that the EU, that Hungary got into the EU, and all these guys ran off to Brussels to find jobs or whatever, and we were forgotten, and CSF couldn't afford to keep funding it. So unfortunately, Vidia's bold experiment with the school eventually came to a close, but not without implications. So
Yeah, but also we were lucky because when we had these experiments in a prison, for example, it was possible because I teach in few university. I'm still doing a course in restorative practices for psychologists. So I took some of my students to the prison, so they were excited, and some of them really are in the top of hierarchy in the ministry. So they they were happy to support the project. And in the meantime, the Ministry of Justice was, and all the department from the Ministry of Justice was trained in mediation, and they had ideas of what can we do differently. But all this is changing from every 4 years, so you have to start from time to time from the beginning. But still, the people who were engaged in restorative processes, they never forgot what it is to be in that. So that's why after 20 years, still people got excited. And that's why even if the top of the hierarchy is not interested in restorative practices, the people on the field are doing if is needed in their spare time. Because I was told by probation officer that if you have something which is better than punishment and it's more human, then they cannot do the same like they did before.
So it's influencing people's thinking,
Yeah,
in a lot of areas.
Do we have time for a story? One of my favorite stories that she tells. I don't know if it
I think we have time for one more story. Sure.
Well, when Vidia spoke in Minneapolis at one of our international conferences, she talked about her experience of making the transition from sort of, I don't know if I'm using the right descriptive words, but sort of rigid professional European, the expert needs to know everything, to a model where you actually put the responsibility on kids. And I don't know if you can quickly tell that story, but I think it really captured when you told it to the conference, people really, found it a high point. If you have a moment to share that story.
Yes, it was my student Brian from CSF in Bethlehem, who was using drugs, and I thought that I have to learn everything about drug addiction and how to help them and therapy and so on. And I spent nights of trying to help him, and of course not opening to the team members, because I was told that if you go to the university, you have to have the answers. So, as an expert, you have to know what you do. And of course, the staff was asking me if I'm okay or everything is okay. And I was ashamed to say that I have no idea what to do with Brian. And finally, I gave up and I said to Brian that he should find another counselor because I'm not able to help him. And he was surprised, saying, "But we are so in such a good relationship." So, and I said, "Okay, but I have no idea what to do with you. I did this and that, and I learned, and I cannot continue." And he said, "Oh no, no, no! Let me show you that I can recall what you told me a few months ago." Or so we started to switch roles. As he trying to convince me that he can make changes, and I was keep saying that I don't know what to do. And he said, "No worry, I know what you told me. I can do it, but please don't switch to me to another counselor." So this boy was able really to change his behavior within few weeks, and we had this agreement that if this won't change in 6 weeks, he will have to have another counselor. So I
Little
was
tough love. Yeah.
Well, and I think, when you expressed I think it was helpful to a lot of professionals who think we have to have the answers. And ultimately, it's really on the client to make the change. And when you frame it that way, it is the restorative dynamic. What can you do to make things different? Anyway, I always like that story.
All right. Well, we're coming up to close to an hour, and I just want to thank you, Vidya. I know we left many stories on the table, so we'll have to do that again another time. But I
yeah, we
mean,
can go to the Romanian topic because that is beautiful as well.
okay, yeah. But for me, it just felt like a real microcosm of what can develop in a certain place, and the challenges of institutionalizing all these things remain, and yet the work of, doing the work that people do, and also familiarizing and exposing people in a creative way, it feels like you were able to, and have been able to, be creative in your practice and share that with a lot of people in your part of the world. So really appreciate your sharing that today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So you can turn your video off if you like. I'm gonna just wrap things up and sing out with one more song. I had a couple in mind, but I think I'm gonna sing this one because I'm feeling hopeful after this discussion. It's an old song from the '60s from Great Speckled Bird. Uh, Sylvia Fricker wrote this song. We sail and we sail together. The name of our ship is the New Beginning. And our sails are a hopeful color, filled with the winds of changing times. We sail and the sea around us, it waves and it swells as a great heart beating. All the storms of the night are passing. How can we sink when we can fly? How can we sink when we can fly? All right. Thanks again to Vidya for sharing all those great stories of how we can do things a different way in the area of justice.
See you
All right.
next week, folks.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.